Point traders, how we doing? Thanks for joining me for the show. We're looking at Cardano ADA on that ticker. Been a minute since we have covered Cardano. A lot has happened with Cardano ADA. If we look at coin market cap rankings, we can see that we are sitting at the number 10 spot right now with market cap 16.2 billion. So just above Shiba Inu. Hopefully we don't lose the number 10 spot and be in the top 10. But we have seen Cardano ADA actually slip down a little bit. Obviously getting overtaken by Doge and Toncoin as well. But regardless, even if we do slip down a little bit, fall outside of the top 10, still plenty to say about Cardano ADA. And right now, specifically, one of the things that I do want to look at is on the current daily, just how we are looking at a longer term period and a longer zone of support for the close for ADA right now. So we're looking at holding a close on top of 44.06 cents. And so the most two recent days of closing just defending this level, obviously long lower shadows on this, showing a little bit more of that dip line, but unfortunately starting to see a taper off in a bullish volume and not necessarily that much bearish volume, but we do have a little bit of an increase. Current daily candle, though, still seeing a little bit more a bullish volume than we did see for bearish volume coming in. This is obviously after rejecting from the 12-period exponential moving average, and then obviously big upper wick now about the size of the body for the current daily candle, showing a little bit more of that selling pressure, especially since that has been what we've seen after we do get close to this 12-period EMA. So now one of the things that we know about exponential moving averages is that the wider they do get between the 12, the 26, and the 50, the stronger the trend in that direction, but then also the more of support that we will find in this big zone here. So for example, if we actually zoom out and look left on this pullback, you can see how the EMAs were pretty tight, and then the bulls were actually able to reclaim this level pretty easily because the EMAs were pretty tight. Wasn't necessarily that big of a zone to overcome. But then, like we talk about too, that when we do have a wide zone, it does provide a lot more support, as well as now a lot more resistance on this bounce attempt to the upside. And this is kind of why we talk about things being path of least resistance, whether the price action is on top of the EMAs or whether it is below the EMAs, because we know that these are extremely strong guide and they do act as those big support and resistance points. So anyway, looking into the current trend right now, obviously pulling back from a high, setting lower highs, and now kind of in this falling triangle pattern, holding up this 44.06 level of support. So realistically, unless we can find a lot more of that bull volume here, we're probably going to see the support level fall at some point, even despite the fact that we have seen higher lows coming in on this little move here. So low, high, low, higher, low, lower, high, higher, low, and then now on the current candle. So right now we do have the biggest reliance on the 12 and 26, so we can actually go ahead and hide the 50, for example. You can see big resistance, big resistance, big resistance zone, and now on the current as well. So do need to find a close on top of this 12-period EMA. If that does happen, then would actually need to find follow through on the following day candle as well. So for example, this candle looked extremely nice, but unfortunately the following day was a bearish pullback day, lost support immediately, and then ever since bears did reclaim it as that big point of resistance. So obviously in the most bullish case of scenarios, we would have a very nice bullish day breaking and closing above. Following day would be great to see another following follow through, close above the 26. So that's the bullish case scenario right now, especially breaking some of these price level resistances. So right now we'd be looking at about 46.82 cents as that big period of closing resistance, looking left, closing resistance on this bounce. Zooming out here, you can see how we did have this period as a little bit of a nice opportunity for support before setting our current trend high right now, which does come in at 81.02 cents. But because we actually did break structure and formed a new lower low on the longer term charts, we're actually looking at a break in that bearish structure, or excuse me, a break in that daily structure to have more of a bearish trend. Turning on the VPVR volume profile visible range for the daily, just want to point out from the most recent trend, we had our fall low for this rally, how we are stuck up in the 45-cent zone, but just overhead, the whole 50-cent zone is going to be pretty big to actually break through, specifically once we get up to the upper level of that 50-cent zone. So starting about 50 cents all the way up to the low 60s here is when we saw the big chunk of mass coming in on this VPVR. But now if we do look at the mass below, we're pretty much looking at minimal volume coming in down to about 39, basically the lower 40 and upper 30 cent level. So that's when we have the next big point of mass. So assuming we break the 44-cent support, we are pretty much going to see prices slipping down to about the 40-cent level before we would find another opportunity at some upside momentum. But in that instance, because we are forming such a big period of consolidation and longer trading here, we are starting to form a little bit more mass in period of that resistance on the way back up. So that would end up being another big struggle level. So that's kind of why it is important for a bullish scenario to see bulls have some upside momentum here and follow through in order to punch through this whole exponential moving average level. But like we said, path of least resistance right now is still favoring bearish downside action. And so especially if we get slippage out of the rest of the crypto, it's almost certain that we will likely see ADA slip down to about the 40-cent level. So now in a bullish scenario, supposing we actually do hold this zone breakthrough EMAs, we're still going to be looking at getting set up and stuck for a while at the upper 50s and lower 60s like we talked about. But that is a good sign, because then when we finally do break above it, this is a very nice period to actually sit back and find a lot of support on top of in order to continue a longer growth and trend to the upside. However, in a bearish scenario, or obviously the downside to this, is that it does take a little bit longer to see those gains and form that momentum to the upside. But overall, that's pretty much the dynamics of how a chart set up like this would ultimately end up playing out. Now, I do want to look at some technical indicators here, specifically RSI Relative Strength Index, and do want to zoom out because we actually did have oversold levels of this RSI. Now, we did have oversold RSI, more or less a flatline level of support, yet meanwhile, the RSI is starting to have a little bit more upside momentum and kind of right now in a little bit more of this pennant formation, trying to break out to the upside, because as we can see, we actually do have a very nice downside period of resistance on this RSI. So if we can see this RSI actually gain some strength and break above that, that's going to kind of be one of the signals that the bulls look for in order to see a little bit more upside momentum. And then pairing that too with a little bit more upside strength at a stochastic RSI, could see a very strong case for it actually rallying up and breaking above this 30 line and actually seeing a lot of nice upside pressure based on the stochastic RSI as well. So now flipping over to the 2-day chart, and want to pull up technicals as well, same sort of thing. Actually did see the RSI close down in oversold levels. So on the 2-day, we did see the RSI close 28.46 and then below that 29.83. So 2 times barely breaking above it or below it, and then also now looking at this downtrend resistance line. So hopefully seeing RSI now, especially after being oversold in a lot of these instances and holding this level of support, trying to find a little bit more upside along with the stochastic RSI, already having very nice trending movement to the upside. So now actually looking at the chart, like we talked about, very nice level of closing support coming in for this chart and looking at 44.06 cents for that. Obviously in this setup too, despite having a huge sell-off day like the rest of crypto space had our low high from rejection of the 12-period EMA, pulled back, set that higher low, a little bit of a lower high right now, but because we are looking at setting another higher low, trying to actually top out this high level for this price, and for that looking at a high of 47.72. So if we can see prices actually rally above that, then that would be putting in a new short-term higher high. And then in that instance too, we would likely see a very nice break and hopefully a close on top of this 12-period EMA for this 2-day chart. But speaking of EMAs on this 2-day, we can actually zoom out and see how very nice the 50-period EMA has actually been as a guide. So turning off 12 and 26, very nice guide of support, flipping it as resistance. So obviously in this instance, like we talked about, we're going to have a struggle pretty much the whole 50-cent level that we do hit, which likely is going to intersect with the 50-period EMA as well. This 2-day chart does kind of nicely highlight, though, for volume, just how we have been looking at decreasing peaks in bearish volume. So despite having an initial huge sell-off, haven't necessarily had contained an increased selling pressure from there. So the fact that we are holding this level of closing support with decreased selling pressure kind of starts to be a little bit more of a good sign, as long as we do get a little bit more increased bullish volume. And so although we are seeing decreased bullish buying pressure as well, the fact that we have had a very nice level of closing support hold hopefully should be able to see the bulls defending it in the face of decreased selling pressure and a decreased bearish volume. Okay, so now flipping over into the weekly chart, because this isn't necessarily the best altcoin weekly chart setup, but just want to talk about the levels here again, and specifically looking back left, resisting off the 26-period EMA, switching down to the 12, very nice rally that actually rallied up above the 50. So had a backtest of this 50 on multiple attempts and weeks, and surprisingly, we didn't see a backtest to confirm the 12 and 26 period as that support. But obviously, huge rally up, resisting from this price level pretty much right at just below the 60 cent, pulling back, kicking off, confirming 12-period weekly EMA support, which is a very nice sign, rallying that, breaking that, and then not finding any sort of weekly support on this retracement until right now. We actually are getting resistance from the 26, and then realistically now, if we do see a rally, we probably will resist from the 50 as well before ultimately seeing a little bit more of that pullback. But if we actually go ahead and look left here, we're actually looking at a very nice price level support based on previous price level close for this weekly chart. So coming in right at 45.36, big point of resistance, especially right in between this 26 and 50 period zone. So hopefully, especially since we're looking at fifth week, week over week, holding this level of support, hopefully this can be a very nice opportunity for us to sit at this price level and actually be able to see a little bit more upside gains. Now, looking at resistance coming in at 48.86 though, as we can see, despite finding support on the 12-period EMA, looking at very nice support as well coming in for this price level week over week on this pullback and retracement before finding our current trend high. So zooming out a little bit more, you can see how we were looking at the current price zone that we're at right now from 45.36 to 48.86 as being kind of the heart line for this big period of sideways trading and support from about May of 2022 all the way until when we broke this from September. So a big period here. And even if we turn on the VPVR, volume profile visible range in this instance, you can see once again how pretty much all this volume and momentum's coming into where we're at right now for the weekly, pretty much with a center point of mass down to about the support level that we're looking at about 4.5 to about 4.6 cents. Now looking at the rest of the previous weekly resistances, looking at about 40.97 or about 41 cents, which is pretty much where we saw the prices on the flush down to. And it's also the point where the center of mass starts for this next big level. Now looking left, big point of resistance, found it as resistance, and then was our support points on multiple times on this bounce attempt, pulling back to the low of the trend. So the reason this is all relevant is that this could be the potential level like we talked about that we could end up seeing prices go down to. And from current prices, that would pretty much only be about a 10% pullback. So even if we do see a little bit more downside fall and pullback, could see pullbacks in that retracement down to about the low point of this mass down to about 36. I really wouldn't expect in that instance prices to get any further far down than that level. But ultimately, in a bearish scenario, that is pretty much what we could see in the event that we do get continued bearish and downside action out of the rest of the crypto space. Really quick, looking at weekly technical indicators, saw lower highs on RSI for higher high in price. So definitely that bearish divergence here coming in. But right now, looking at very low stochastic RSI, smashed against the zero line and 2.18. So hoping for a very nice bullish cross and then have this oscillator carry us back to the upside in order to break through these EMAs that we fell below. So that's kind of why we're actually looking for a lot of these supports to hold and then get a little bit more upside pressure from a lot of these indicators, hopefully rolling back to the upside and creating a lot more of that bullish buying action. So overall, these type of nice upside days are fun to see out of ADA, especially if we can see continued fall through and realistically breaking through a lot of these exponential moving average resistance points that have been so strong in the future. Would definitely love to hear everyone's thoughts, comments, issues, predictions, disagreements, all that stuff down in the comment sections below. So drop me a note or reach out to me over on Twitter or X at coin_trades is the handle over there. But with that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up the show for today on Cardano ADA. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Do appreciate all the continuous love and support. As always, it does mean so much. Stay safe, coin traders, and I will catch you back in the next video.